For today's video, we're going to be continuing on the one from every team series, and in today's video we're going to be doing every NHL team's biggest draft steal of the past decade. And how I determined if it was a steal, I just did 3rd round to 7th round, so the first 2 rounds I don't really consider them steals, and also the player that they drafted doesn't have to be on that team still. This is just the best draft pick and the player that turned out the best from rounds 3 to 7 for all 31 teams. So without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the video. Starting off with the Anaheim Ducks, I decided to go with Ondrej Kase, and a big reason why is because he was a 7th round pick and it was only in the 2014 draft, and he's already carved out a good couple of years in the NHL, and that is super impressive because in today's NHL you really don't see 7th rounders turn out to be anything, and Ondrej Kase already has a 20 goal season under his belt, and I think he is going to be a future 30 goal scorer for this Anaheim Ducks team. They also had some good draft picks like William Karlsson in a late round, Frederik Andersen, but I went with Ondrej Kase just because he was a 7th round pick, and to me that just embodies what a draft steal is. Next up we have the Arizona Coyotes, and they definitely haven't had the greatest luck in terms of drafting from rounds 3 to 7 over the past decade, so I decided to go with Louis Domingue, who has been a pretty solid backup goaltender in his career so far. He was a 5th round pick, 138th overall in 2010, had a fantastic year with the Tampa Bay Lightning in terms of his win-loss, because obviously a goaltender of a team that's stacked, you're gonna have a decent win-loss. So not too many options here to pick from for the Coyotes, but I guess Louis Domingue is their best steal of the past decade. Moving on now to the Boston Bruins, my pick is Danton Heinen, another team not the greatest luck drafting from rounds 3 to 7, but they have hit pretty big on some of their 1st and 2nd round picks, and obviously that is where they get a lot of their good young talent. But Danton Heinen is a solid young player, and he was a 4th round pick, 116th overall back in 2014, just had 34 points this past season, most likely going to play a bigger role next year, and I think he does have the potential to be a 50-point scorer in this league. Moving on now to the Buffalo Sabres, not too much to pick from. I guess Marcus Foligno though has had the best career so far out of any of their 3rd to 7th round draft picks that they've made over the past decade. 506 games for the 4th round pick, 158 points, 19 points this past season in 82 games played with the Minnesota Wild. He's a solid bottom 6 forward, obviously not still playing with the Buffalo Sabres, the team that drafted him, but still I guess he is their best steal over the past decade. Next up we have the Calgary Flames, a very easy pick here. It's going to be Johnny Gaudreau, a 4th round pick, 104th overall back in 2011, and he is now a superstar in the NHL and the best player on this Calgary Flames team. 387 career points for Gaudreau in almost 400 career games, 99 points this past season. He really took that superstar leap and solidified himself as one of the top wingers in the game, and getting that type of player in the 4th round is super impressive, and he really is one of the biggest draft steals in the past 10 years. Moving on now to the Carolina Hurricanes, an easy pick here. It's going to be Jacob Slavin, a 4th rounder, 110th overall back in 2012, and Jacob Slavin has really became one of the top defensemen in the league, but kind of flew under the radar while doing it. He doesn't really get a lot of credit for how good he really is. If he played for a big market team like Montreal or Toronto or some team like that, he definitely would get a lot more recognition, but nonetheless a huge steal by the Carolina Hurricanes and definitely their best of the past decade. Moving along now to the Blackhawks, my pick is Andrew Shaw, 5th round, 139th overall back in 2011, and he's had a very solid career so far, 233 points in 504 games, just had a career year with the Montreal Canadiens, 47 points in 63 games. Now he's returning to the Hawks next year via trade. I definitely like that pickup for Chicago, and he can really be a valuable piece for them, and he's just been a very good NHL player, and getting that in the 5th round is very impressive. Next up we have the Colorado Avalanche, and my pick is Tyson Barrie, a 3rd round pick, 64th overall back in 2009, 307 points in 484 games for the defenseman, 59 points this past season, an amazing power play quarterback, a great puck moving defenseman, obviously now a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I'm very excited to see how he does there, but nonetheless wherever he plays from here on out, a big steal by the Colorado Avalanche getting him in the 3rd round. Moving on now to the Columbus Blue Jackets, my pick is Josh Anderson, 4th round, 95th overall back in 2012, and before you guys say it should be Cam Atkinson, he was the 2008 draft, and this is only 2009 to present day, but Josh Anderson really has become a solid goal scorer in the NHL, 27 goals this past season, and now most likely with an increased role next year. I think he really has the potential to become a 30 goal scorer, a great draft pick by the Columbus Blue Jackets. Moving on to the Dallas Stars, an easy pick here, it's got to be John Klingberg, 5th round, 131st overall back in 2010, 259 career points for Klingberg in 367 games. Just had a great year, and I think if he stays healthy next season, he really does have the potential to be one of the best defensemen in the entire league and maybe even in Norris Trophy conversation. I think John Klingberg is that good, and for Dallas getting him so late in the draft, that is a super impressive pick. Moving on now to my favorite team, the Detroit Red Wings, and my pick is easily Andreas Athanasiou, a 4th round pick, 110th overall back in 2012, 130 career points for him so far, just had a 30-goal season this past year. It was really a breakout year for him. He's one of the most exciting players to watch in the entire NHL. He's super fast, super skilled, and I definitely think that 30-goal season is just a glimpse of what's to come from Athanasiou, and getting that type of player in the 4th round is a really good pick by Detroit. Moving on to the Edmonton Oilers, my pick is Erik Gustafsson. They drafted him in the 4th round, 93rd overall back in 2012, but classic Edmonton, they made a mistake and didn't even end up signing him to an entry-level contract, which made him a free agent, and then he decided to sign with the Chicago Blackhawks and just had a 60-point season as a defenseman this past year and is now an important piece for that Blackhawks blue line. I bet you Edmonton wishes they signed him now because he would be a nice piece for them. Moving along to the Florida Panthers, another easy pick here. I went with Vincent Trocheck, a 3rd round pick, 64th overall back in 2011, and he's had a really solid career so far, 246 points in 365 games. Struggled with injury a little bit this past season, but I think next year he's going to be a big piece for them if he is healthy, and in my opinion, he's one of the more underrated players in the league, especially after the 2017-18 season that he had. Moving along to the LA Kings, my pick is Colin Miller, a 5th round pick, 151st overall in 2012, a very solid defenseman so far throughout his career. Didn't have a long stint in LA though. They traded him to the Boston Bruins along with Martin Jones and a 2015 1st round pick in exchange for Milan Lucic, and then obviously after he was with Boston, he wasn't protected in the expansion draft, and then he was a member of the Vegas Golden Knights, and then this summer we saw him being traded to the Buffalo Sabres, and hopefully that could be his home now and he doesn't keep bouncing around from team to team, but nonetheless a very good defenseman to get in the 5th round. Next up we have the Minnesota Wild, and my pick is Erik Haula, another very solid NHL player who was a 7th round pick back in 2009, 151 career points for him in 357 games, was injured a lot this past season with Vegas, so obviously didn't put up good numbers, only 5 points in 15 games, but still, now with a fresh start in Carolina, I think he can get back to that 50-point guy and like 20 goal scorer, and getting that in the 7th round, that is a very good pick at the time by Minnesota. Moving on now to the Montreal Canadiens, a very easy pick here. Brendan Gallagher in the 5th round of 2010, and to me he's one of the more underrated wingers in the entire NHL. He just brings everything. Goal scoring, a 30-goal season this past year. He's physical, he seems like he's a great leader, and that pick by Montreal in the 5th round is definitely amazing, and he's now turned out to be a very important player for them. Next up we have the Nashville Predators, and my pick is Victor Arvidsson, a 4th round pick, 112th overall back in 2014, and Victor Arvidsson to me has become one of the more underrated goal scorers in the entire league. He only played 58 games last year and had 34 goals. If he was healthy and played every game, he definitely could have been pushing a 50-goal season, and I honestly think Victor Arvidsson is capable of that. He's that good, and getting that type of player in the 4th round, a crazy draft pick by Nashville. Moving along now to another very late pick, and that is Jesper Bratt, selected by the Devils in the 6th round back in 2016, and he's already had a couple of very good years, 68 total points in 125 career games. If he had stayed healthy this past season, I think this would have been his breakout year, but now I'm going to move that over to next year because he's going to be playing with a lot of talented guys, and Jesper Bratt coming to the NHL so quick after being a 6th round pick is super impressive and definitely a very good draft pick by the Devils. Moving on now to the New York Islanders, and the easy pick has to be Anders Lee, their current captain, a 6th round pick back in 2009, and he's carved out a very good career so far, 258 points in 425 games. His points and goals dropped off a little bit this season from his 40-goal campaign back in 2017-18. Still a very good top 6 forward and definitely an important piece for this New York team. Moving on now to the other New York team, and that is the Rangers, and I went with Pavel Buchnevich. Now, if this was all time, obviously it would be Henrik Lundqvist, a 7th rounder back in 2000, an amazing pick by them, but since it's of the past decade, I went with Buchnevich, a 3rd rounder, 75th overall in 2013, and I think he really has the potential to be a consistent 30-goal scorer in this league. He has all the tools, he has the size, the speed, and the skill. He almost did it last year. I think if he stayed healthy, he would have. He only had 21 goals in 64 games, but I think Pavel Buchnevich is definitely on the verge of being a breakout star. Moving on to the Ottawa Senators, a very easy pick here. It's got to be Mark Stone, a 6th round pick, 178th overall back in the 2010 NHL draft, and he has quietly became one of the top wingers in the entire NHL. Obviously, no longer with the Ottawa Senators, but still, nonetheless, he has to be their best steal of the past decade. Next up, we have the Philadelphia Flyers, and my pick is Shane Gostisbehere, a 3rd round pick, 78th overall back in the 2012 draft, 187 points in 298 games for the defenseman. Had a little bit of a down year compared to his amazing 2017-18 season. I'm pretty confident that he can bounce back and become like a 50-point defenseman again, and getting that in the 3rd round is a super impressive draft pick by Philadelphia. Moving along now to the Pittsburgh Penguins, it's got to be Matt Murray, a 3rd round pick, 83rd overall back in 2012. A great career so far, already 2 Stanley Cups, and for such a young goalie, that is super impressive, and obviously he is still going to be their current goalie and the goaltender leading them into the future, and getting that type of goalie in the 3rd round is super impressive, and he's really been a huge part of their team over the past couple of years. Moving along now to the San Jose Sharks, we have the $1 million man Kevin Labanc, 6th round pick, 171st overall back in 2014, 116 points for Labanc so far in 214 career games, just had a breakout 56-point season with the Sharks, was an RFA this summer, and easily could have got around $4 to maybe even $5 million, but he was an amazing team player, took that $1 million deal to give the GM of the Sharks some room to sign some other guys to bring in so they could still be a competitive team. That's just an amazing move. It makes Kevin Labanc one of my favorite players just because you wouldn't really see too many players do that, and he obviously is the biggest steal for the Sharks of the past decade. Moving on now to the defending Stanley Cup champion St. Louis Blues, and my pick is defenseman Colton Parayko, a 3rd round pick, 86th overall back in 2012, 131 career points for him in 322 games, had a fantastic playoff run this year, was a massive reason why they were able to go all the way and eventually win the Stanley Cup, and getting that caliber of a defenseman in the 3rd round, that is a super impressive pick by the St. Louis Blues. Moving along now to the Tampa Bay Lightning, an easy pick here, it's got to be Braden Point, a 3rd round pick, 79th overall back in 2014, and to me, Braden Point is already like a superstar caliber NHL player, 92 points this past season, 41 goals, had a fantastic year, and he's still very young and is only going to get better, and getting that caliber of player in the 3rd round is an amazing draft pick, and Braden Point is definitely going to get paid a lot of money this summer as an RFA. Moving along now to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and my pick is Andreas Johnsson, a 7th round pick, 202nd overall back in 2013, was a rookie this past season, had 43 points, a 20-goal season, a really strong year for Andreas Johnsson, and I think he's going to be able to put up 20 goals on a pretty consistent basis, and getting that type of player in the 7th round is super rare, and definitely an amazing pick by Toronto because he's a big piece to their team now. Next up, we have the Vancouver Canucks, and there wasn't too many players to choose from. I went with Ben Hutton, who was a 5th round pick, 147th overall in 2012, but Vancouver is a team that they just hit on a lot of their top picks and don't really get their good players as, you know, draft steals. But Ben Hutton, still a pretty solid defenseman, 20 points this past season in 69 games. Not quite sure what his role is going to be with the Canucks next year with all their new additions, but nonetheless, still a solid defenseman, and getting that in the 5th round, in my opinion, is kind of a steal. Moving on to the Vegas Golden Knights, I couldn't pick one for them because they have only been around for 3 NHL drafts so far. Moving on to the Washington Capitals, my pick is Cody Eakin, a 3rd round pick, 85th overall back in 2009. Obviously not currently with the Capitals, had a stint with the Dallas Stars, and then was picked up in the expansion draft by the Vegas Golden Knights, and is playing very well for them. He had a 22-goal season this past year, 41 points. He will be a UFA next summer. I'm kind of interested to see what happens with him if Vegas tries to bring him back, because they don't really have a lot of money, and if he hits the open market, I think there will be a lot of interest in him, because to me, he is really the ideal 3rd-line center, and a 3rd round pick for him, that is a good draft pick. And now finally, finishing out the video with Connor Hellebuyck for the Winnipeg Jets, a 5th round pick, 130th overall back in 2012, has had a very solid career for the Jets so far, was a Vezina Trophy finalist in the 2017-18 season. He had ridiculous numbers. They kind of came back to earth a little bit this past season, but nonetheless, he was still pretty solid. But if he gets back to that 2017-18 form where he was a Vezina finalist, Winnipeg should be a contender again next year, and Connor Hellebuyck, a 5th round pick, that is a massive steal. So that is going to wrap up today's video. I really hope you guys did enjoy. Make sure to let me know down in the comment section who you think the biggest steal of all time from your favorite team is. I'm very curious to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comment section. And also, if you have not already, make sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter. And if you want to, you never have to, you can become a Patreon, because I will be doing a fantasy hockey league with the first 11 patrons. The links to all that will be down in the description below. And with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you did enjoy, make sure to drop a like on it and subscribe to the channel for daily NHL content. And I will see you guys all in the next video.